Well, welcome along to the latest edition of View from the Commentary Box, and I'm delighted to say joining me at the back of the Netherdale stand is Scotland legend Iain Milne. Iain, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me this afternoon. Great to see you in good health, a smile on your face, and as you said just before we started the interview, this game here today was scheduled for I think the 8th of January. We're now heading towards springtime, we're well into spring anyway, and I have to say that these conditions are much more favourable for these two sides today.
Oh, definitely, and I think it's a fitting end to the season. I know both teams have got a game after this, but this is a big one as far as they're concerned, and I think whoever wins this will be the team that gets promoted up into the Premiership.
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because we're now at the end of a full cycle, a full season that has been at times interrupted by COVID, but we're going to get a proper conclusion to the season, and that's important for both these sides.
Oh, it's definitely. I did feel the season that almost completed, the results should have stood in bigger, talking about the National 1 team should have gone up and teams should have gone down, but that was the choice of the club, so delighted to see a full season happen now.
You look at these two clubs then in isolation from a Gala point of view, with their history within the borders and within the wider Scottish game. They clearly want to be at the top table of the amateur game. For Heriots, it's an unusual position not to be in the top flight, but that is obviously a consequence of the Super 6.
Yes, and I can see the side of both camps, that people will want Gala to go up, and I actually think they're probably the best team in the league this year, because of the history, and this is their first 15. There will be doubters about a Super 6 team getting a team into the Premiership, but all I can say is the lads in our Blues team, as we call them, have worked incredibly hard this year, and they've enjoyed it, which is what rugby's about, and may the best team win.
And how have they felt coming back after a 2-year break because of COVID? I mean, in 2021 it was a very truncated year with rugby opportunities few and far between because of COVID. Was there a concern, a worry within Heriots and within the wider game you were going to lose a lot of players because of COVID?
Yeah, I must admit, I had worries, but in fact I would have to say that our numbers at Goalnacre are larger now than they were before the COVID started. But you know, we can maybe talk about that, how we improve the club game and get the numbers back. And there's no doubt there may have been a drop-off, but as someone said to me, human beings are social animals, and I think a lot of the people and players have really missed their rugby.
Yeah, by the very nature of being drawn to a team sport, it's unlikely that too many would then move away from that to an individual sport like golf. They would maybe take that up as a secondary sport, but they want the nature, that camaraderie, that contest and conflict with opposition teams as well.
Absolutely, and it's a blend. It's you know, everything complements each other. You know, I like my fishing, which is a very solitary sport, but I love my rugby as well, and the social side that goes along with it. Yeah,
you need that sort of time away, perhaps time for reflection, but also, as you say, getting to know, I mean, teammates that you've got to know over a long period of time become very, very close and become very much part of the fabric of your own life.
Yes, and I think this is a very important thing that we have to try and get back into our clubs. I really despair at times at the moment on the club scene of what's happening in this linear league system we have. I'm not convinced that it's the best thing for our game at the moment. I really think every effort should be getting to get more players onto the pitch again. You look through interesting stats. For instance, COVID, we were talking about that. The information I have is that 80% of the games cancelled with COVID were by the away team. If you look at the Saturdays that were designated as club Saturdays after January, there was virtually 100% fulfilment of fixture from Premiership down to Nat 3. There was 2-3 games off one weekend because of the weather. Yet rearranged fixtures, 40% were cancelled, again because of COVID. And I worry why are clubs basically using, you look at the stats don't lie. They're using excuses not to play games, and of course winning is important, but to me playing the game is far more important than winning or losing, and I think we've somehow got to change our mentality that it's key to get players on the pitch. And I'm talking about the men's game now. I'm really interested in the ladies' game as well, but it's in a totally different stage of its development, and it's the main game that is not working at the moment.
Do you think there's perhaps now too many distractions that take players away, and I mean collective groups of players going away, for instance, to race meetings or to stag do's and that, during a season when perhaps in your day that wasn't the done thing? You had a structured season and very little happened in that time apart from rugby.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there is more to do in life than in my day. But we have to adjust to that. And it doesn't mean that the players are less committed, especially at the higher level. But when it comes to second 15 or regional rugby, the players don't want to travel. So let's get more regional rugby in the games, in the leagues. Do we need a Nat 3? I have a question about that. The focus, people talk about ambition. To me, the ambition of every club should be to get another team on the pitch, not to go up the leagues. I would almost go to the stage of regional rugby, no promotion for 3 or 5 years, and a total concentration on getting that second or third 15 out on the pitch, because that's what will make clubs in the years to come. And we're not doing that at the moment. Is there also an argument that, well, again, we'll take any Borders club, say, where you're within an hour, just over an hour of Edinburgh, and you've got a nucleus of young players that are all wanting to go to university but are unable to or not committed to travelling back to play for their home club. Should there then be a system in place to keep them in the game where they are either found out or they're encouraged to go to another club closer to where they're going to stay during the week to keep them in the game? I think we're in a different situation there, because people at the Borders talk to me about they lose a lot of their players up to university. But then in Edinburgh, we don't have a surfeit of players. These players are simply not playing the game, and we have it coming out the schools and the youth sections all over the country. So I'm not convinced that's the biggest issue. I think we have to identify what, you talk about that hour's drive to Edinburgh. The number of games cancelled with that trip to Sutra both ways is disproportionate to what it should be. And therefore, in the Borders, it should be regional rugby. Should Langham not be in the same league as Kelso Seconds, or and likewise back in Edinburgh? Despite what the players say, and I'm talking again below first 15 rugby, that they don't want to travel. Again, the stats bear out. I've looked at it over 10 years now, and the cancellations of away fixtures where travel's involved is high. So we have to change what we're doing, and it doesn't need to be forever. As I said, I would have a 3 to 5 year moratorium almost of no promotion, relegation, and just concentrate on the game. For instance, the SIU and the Sustainability Fund, I don't know if it's called that, anyway, they award money to running a first 15, a second 15, and a third 15. If you're a National 1 or a Premiership team, you shouldn't get any money for running a first 15. What you should do is get far more for running a second 15. Because if you've got pretensions to be a National League team, you surely got to be able to get a second 15 out. You need to have the solid foundations there. Talking, just as you were describing that, I was thinking back as well to journeys that players made to go to train. I'm thinking of John Frame coming here. He travelled long distances from his work to come down to Gala. Similarly, some Hoyt players were travelling 2 hours there and back to Mansfield Park to go and train. Is there a concern as well over the support numbers, the numbers coming through the gates? We're talking there about sort of player numbers and player ranks. Does that extend to a fan base then? Well, yes, it does to a degree, and if rugby is happening regularly during the season, the supporters will support it. People talked about having more game to generate income. The general supporter only has a limited amount of money and time he'll want to spend in rugby. So I'm not convinced games going into April is a great thing. It's a long season and people have other things to do. We need to get back the clubhouse atmosphere that players enjoy, and the spectators will enjoy that as well. And we do that by numbers. And you hit a really good point, because if we don't have second and third 15s playing, they often are your administrators of your club in years to come forward, and your supporters and your parents of children. The game will wither, and so I think time is now for action to happen. And just to finish with, on that point of action, if you were given a blank sheet of paper and a realistic timeline to
introduce some changes, what would be, I'm sure you've touched on this already in some of your answers, but what would be the first changes that you'd make? Because these are going to be a series of steps over a period of time.
I'm not convinced it has to be a series of steps. I would start next season, but realistically it's not going to happen. But the year after that, I would go down to Premiership, Nat 1, Nat 2. The rest is regional. And these regional leagues would be run by the clubs, not by the SIU. So the clubs decide when they're playing. They decide the rules and subs. You know, why do we need 5 subs for games nowadays? We should only have 2, and that would release players to play further down the game. And people will talk health and safety about scrummaging. Well, we'll go to unopposed, and then people say, oh, but teams will cheat, as has happened in the past. Well, you then dig them up and say, why have you gone to unopposed scrums over the last 3 or 4 weeks? The clubs know what's happening, but don't challenge each other about it. So there has to be changes like that. So I'd go down to 2 subs, 2 regional rugby, no promotion relegation, just have these leagues settling down, the SRU funding second 15s, etc, etc. And I think a period of 3 to 5 years to stabilise the game, get the numbers up again, however long it takes, I don't know, but it can't carry on like the way it is at the moment, because I said, if you look at the stats, clubs are cancelling games, and I don't believe it's because they don't have players. I sometimes believe it's because the coach doesn't feel he's got his strongest team to travel. And is that what this game's all about? We're that big game today, and whoever loses, the players will be disappointed. In a week's time, they will recover, and we'll be back playing the game again.
And that always remains part and parcel of sport.
Of course it does, yes, and that's the most, that's it.
Yeah. Well, Iain, thank you very much for your time. It's been fascinating talking to you. It's a subject and a part of the game, that this level of the men's game, that we could explore in great depth, but you've tapped into some really interesting points, so thank you for your time.
No, thank you, Stuart. It's been a pleasure.